Hey there. Welcome to History Chats this afternoon, or whatever time it is when you're watching this. We're doing something a little different. We're done with the reruns, unless you're watching this again. I guess then it's a rerun. But no, this is new. This is just pre-recorded because this is a little bit more in depth than we normally do, which is to just go live and give a presentation. But I kind of wanted to try something different here, which is to do some stuff on the scene to show specifically. Well, I mean, if you clicked the link, you probably got an idea of what we're talking about, which is the new exhibit that we have at the Marathon County Historical Society, Peek Inside, which is a look at what we collect and why. And I thought, hey, this is kind of a good opportunity to take a look at the exhibit. How did it come to be? What were the challenges in putting it together? What kind of things did you as just a visitor, you might not get a sense to know, hey, what went into this? There's some interesting stories about what went in and what didn't, and why we make those decisions. And I kind of wanted to just share some of those stories here. And who knows, maybe this will be a regular thing. Maybe this won't work out, and we'll just go back to the old format. Yeah, I hope you enjoy this. I'm going to kick it over now to me to talk about what's on the walls, me and another recording to leave this space. So take it away, me.
Hey there. So we're in the exhibit space of the Historical Society. This is our exhibit space that typically moves, cycles through a couple different exhibits over the course of every few years. And we've hit that point where, yeah, a new exhibit came earlier this year. This is called Peek Inside, which is a look, I mean, right there on the title. It's an opportunity to peek inside and see what we collect. Usually the stuff that you see here, actually most of the stuff you see in most of our exhibits is in storage. It's in preservation. We want to make sure that they're around for the future, and we don't, some museums might have lots and lots of stuff out, but we find it a little bit easier to keep track of things, and also to tell an interesting story if you have a limited number of things on the certain subject. So, yeah, this was an interesting exhibit, which I was, fortunate enough to be part of the development with, along with the rest of the team, which is Linda Forbes and Kathy Volkman, who are our textile and artifact curators, respectively. And then Linda's husband, Russ Forbes, rounds out that team. All three of them have been putting exhibits together for a long time here and gotten quite good at it, I would say. And I try to help out here where I could as part of the the archives and photographs and things like that, adding to that. But the basic idea of this was, we have a lot of cool stuff. We've been collecting since the 1950s. Actually, some of the stuff, I don't know if any of this stuff goes back before that, but we did inherit a couple sort of collections that go back to the 30s and earlier. So lots of cool stuff that we have, and especially the things that we ended up putting out here. A lot of these sort of things don't necessarily lend themselves to an existing exhibit. We might have a dairy exhibit or a lumbering exhibit or medical or whatever we're doing, and the topic may not necessarily work as a this is the story of dairy farming. We even stuff that is farm related, like behind me, this cylinder thing is a incubator for chicks, but it just was too large and didn't quite fit into the story, and so maybe didn't make it into the end of the exhibit. But we have a lot of these cool things, and actually it's even a bad example because it is kind of related to a recent exhibit, but there are a lot of things in here, like the one in the corner here. That's the permanent wave machine for hair, getting that wave in there. It's a wonderful piece, but it just hasn't, we don't often have exhibits that need it. So this is a chance to pull that stuff out and just to give a nice cross-section of what we do and what we collect and why. So with that in mind, I wanted to kind of, if you haven't gotten in to see the exhibit, as of recording here, it's been up for about a little over a month, 2 months. I probably could have looked this up beforehand, but I didn't. But in 2023 here, and it'll be up for a little while yet. So you come on down if you haven't gotten a chance, and you get the chance. It's a good exhibit, if I don't say so myself. Anyway, the reason I wanted to do this is not just to show off a corner of the exhibit, but also to illustrate or tell a little bit about the history of Anyway, the reason that I wanted to talk about this and shoot this is not just to tell you about the exhibit and promote it, although, you know, if you want to come by, it's going to be up for a little while here as of the recording. But it's also an interesting process because unlike most of our exhibits, which are around a theme of some sort, the theme here is a little different because it isn't about the history of like dairy farming. It's the history of collections. So we went about it in a slightly different way. So normally when we put an exhibit together, we might decide, okay, well, here are the stories that we need to hit. And then we might think about what goes into those, and then we find the objects and the graphics and things like that, and kind of fill it in. And here we knew we had a lot of stuff. So what we did is we started with some big things that we know we wanted to get into the exhibit, like the wave machine in the back corner there, permanent wave machine. That's a really cool object that just doesn't fit into most of our exhibits. So let's put it out there. And so we knew that there's some things that were going to go into the exhibit, but we didn't know what everything was. And so we kind of started to kind of get an idea of the flow. We started with actually putting stuff up on the walls. And that's what I want to talk about for this little insight here, this video. Because I think that was the first step we did, and it makes sense to get the stuff on the walls and then work your way forward so you don't have to, go behind things that are already set up. So we did that. We put the big stuff up, filled in the gaps, and worked our way into the foreground. And then some of the things like the cases and things like that, we had a little bit more time to kind of figure out what was going to go in them and what that was going to be. So with that in mind, I want to talk about a couple examples. So I'm in this corner in part because I wanted to talk about Johnny Schmitz up there in the corner. He's the baseball player. At this point, this is him in the I think let's see, I wrote it down. 1953 is what we reckon this is from. He had a career. He pitched in 13 seasons over the course of the 1940s and 50s in the major leagues. And this is during his tenure as part of the New York Yankees. He ended up retiring in 1956 in Wausau, and then came back to Wausau, where he was from, and ended up being the groundskeeper for the American Legion golf course, among just being a member of the local community. Some people got lucky enough to have him be there. He played on some softball leagues and stuff like that. Kind of even though he was maybe not actively playing in the major leagues, certainly a good addition to any team. Anyway, the thing is, we don't just have one picture of Johnny Schmitz. We have two. I'm going to make a cut here. Second picture. So we actually have two framed pictures, and as we were looking through our collection, we decided, one of these would be great. We even thought about getting both of them in there, but for reasons I'll get into in a second, that didn't work out. The one behind me is from pretty early or later in his career, in the late 50s. This is from a little bit earlier when he was off to pitch for the Chicago Cubs, I think, or one of the Sox. Yeah, I'm not sure. But this is from when he went to Chicago. He was given a car by the community, kind of pulled the money together, and they bought him a car as a congratulations for his getting signed by the major leagues. So these are the signatures of all the people who contributed, and they gave him a car. So there's a bunch of reasons why we decided to go with the picture that we did and not this one. Both of them have similar challenges in that, they're not necessarily designed to be hung in this sort of way. I'm going to turn around the frame here, and you can see maybe the back of what we're working with here. Okay, so here, let me do this. So there's not a whole lot here. There are some some eye hooks here with a wire, but this is not something that we would really want to hang the whole thing on. Something similar with the other one as well. And so, okay, well, that's fine. I mean, it might be fine at one point, but we don't know how well these are going to hang. And we, generally speaking, don't like to just hang things by a wire like this because, especially if something's up for a year or two, these frames are pretty solid, but you never know what's going to happen, and you don't want something to just, you know, fall. Yeah. So what we ended up doing with the one back there is, I'm going to move the camera again. Ooh. So you can see on the bottom here, there's a little cleat. There's one on the top too. So basically what that was put in, Russ, having done a few of these over the years, these exhibits, kind of know what we can and can't do in terms of mounting things. And this allows us to have it secured to the wall in a way that's not going to be dependent on, you know, wire staying in there. And like I said, we were originally going to, let me flip Johnny around here for a second. All right, is that what it was? Close enough, right? Okay. So why did we go with this one and not this one? Well, partially, it's not that there's a better story necessarily. Arguably, there's a better story with the smaller one, but it doesn't read as well from a distance, and that's something we have to consider. We have a lot of framed photographs and graphics of various, you know, signs and stuff. They don't always read from this distance, especially because we knew we were going to have, you know, things in front of it, and so, you know, you can't really read the signatures in the way that, you know, it's nice to be able to see that. And so it loses a little bit of that. And also that fills the space a little bit better. It's much more recognizable. You can just see at a glance what you're looking at, and you don't need the extra information. The other aspect of it, no, we also tried for a while to try to get this mounted. We were thinking of getting it up there, kind of where that raincoat is hung today, right now. But ultimately, that didn't feasible because not all walls here are the same. So we have a number of walls. Originally, this wall that you see that Johnny is hanging on, we had that put in, kind of like a front on top of it. The original building was built, there's a brick wall, and there's glass windows. Not so great at hanging things on those. So this is a you know, drywall on top of wood studs. That means that we can hang things on it a little bit better. Unfortunately, that wall is not that way. It is, there's a little bit of wall, but it's not able to hang the weight. There's kind of a steel structure underneath it, kind of a framework. And so we were a little iffy about hanging something this heavy on something like that. And so we decided to end up doing something else. And ultimately, this is one of the other stories that are, you know, lessons that it's worth mentioning is that even though we didn't necessarily get a chance to put two Johnnies up here and get both stories, there's a lot of other things that we could choose from, and ultimately we were able to fill the space and, you know, move things around with a lot of other interesting stories too. But I want to just kind of related to that. There's one more. Well, there's two more stories that I'm going to talk about framing and things that put up on the walls. But the next one has to do with another thing from the 1950s that's also in this corner, which is the fair sign. I'm going to quick move Johnny here so that we can see it a little bit better. There we go. So this is the, again, up in the corner. You can see that next to the raincoat, if you didn't see it, you know, lots of stuff to look at. This is a display, a sort of cardboard little poster type thing that they would use to advertise the upcoming Wisconsin Valley Fair. We wanted to include some stuff from the fair. There's some stuff sprinkled in across the whole thing. And this was a poster, again, looking for things that were able to put up that are visually distinct from a distance. We had a couple options here. Now, this wasn't something that, like, one of the bigger things. This is, you know, we knew we were going to have Johnny Schmitz because it's such a large photograph. We knew we were going to have some textiles and some banners and things like that. But this is one that we knew we could kind of fit in where we needed to. And so this was chosen a little bit late. I'm going to zoom out here. Okay, so I have prepared on the easel again. we had a couple alternatives. In this case, this is from 1953, 54? 54. And we have some other ones from the 1950s and 60s that came in over the years. So here's an example here. We've got some harness racing taking place. This is, it's not dated, probably from the late 60s, maybe to the early 70s. We also have some auto racing. That was very popular there as well. Sort of a general, this is for the junior fair specifically, but you know, nice general stuff. Oh, upside down clown. There we go. Some sort of more neon things. I think this might even gone into the 1980s. They all kind of do the job. You know, catch your attention and do things. And the reason we didn't go with the clown up there, I mean, there might be a bunch of reasons, but we ultimately went with the one that we did because the colors kind of fit in a nice way. It kind of played off of the yeast, Fleischmann's yeast advertisement to the right with the blue, and then catching the coat on the left with the yellow, and it just kind of fit the theme a little bit too. I guess we don't have much auto racing or harness racing or clowns in the rest of the exhibit, but we just decided sometimes it comes down to an aesthetic reason. Sometimes there isn't a justification based off of, oh, well, this one's going to frame, but like all of these are going to hang the same way. And again, we use the same sort of cleats to kind of hold it to the wall. These definitely don't come with, you can see that they have like this flap that you can use to kind of stand it up, but obviously we don't want to rely on that to hold things up. So another example here of a different sort, we had multiple options. Now a lot of the stuff that we put in here, you know, we don't have multiple versions of it like this. You know, we only have the 2 pictures of Johnny Schmitz, but you know, some of the other things we only have really 1 or 2 examples of, and maybe, you know, it's an easy decision to go with this one over that one because of the condition issues or the ease of you know, logistics to just put it up. But sometimes we do have, you know, multiple options, and you know, if they're all equal, sometimes it just comes down to, what do we think looks best in the space? One more example of a thing that we could have put in the exhibit that would have been amazing, but another reason why sometimes things don't always go on display is timing. And I'm going to switch over here and bring that in. All right, let's see, how does that look? Zoom out a bit. Okay, so this is an amazing display. This is a sign advertising the magnificent Litzer, local Marathon County guy named Edward Litzer. This is in the 1950s as well, coincidentally. I guess I have an inadvertent theme here about the things I just talked about. But in the 50s, he would do some, you know, amazing sort of acrobatics on the top of a 100-foot pole, and he would do this without a net, and he would, you know, do acrobatics and you know, do all these things. Certainly would have been something interesting and unusual that you wouldn't see anywhere else. And this came in just like we were finalizing everything and had everything up, and then we were contacted, hey, you know, would you be interested? I think his granddaughter was the one that contacted us and said, hey, we have this, do you want it? We don't really necessarily know what to do with it, but we'd love to have it for a home, and absolutely, we would love to have this, and so it came to us. But by the time that it arrived, you know, it was kind of too late. We already had the big stuff up. And in fact, I don't know, maybe it's confirmation bias here, but it seems like we have gotten a lot of signage that emerged. I think we've gotten 3 or 4 large scale signs that are just amazing and would have been perfect for the exhibit, but showed up after we had gotten past that stage. Or since the exhibit has been up, which is something that happens sometimes, you know, is what it is. But again, interesting story here. Why do we have things on display? Why do things go into our collection and not put out on display? Well, sometimes it's a timing thing, you know, it just doesn't come at the right time. And so we have to do with what we have. I don't know, this is a bit of a cop-out. I just kind of wanted to show the sign because it's very cool. So we'll maybe come back and look at some of the other stuff in here. I think I want to kind of think about what would be a good, I don't want to give everything away, still come on and see the exhibit. It's nothing like seeing the stuff in person, I assure you. But we'll maybe come back to this theme and look at some of the other objects that have been put out, and maybe some stories about why they went up or why we chose it, or maybe some stuff that we didn't put in. But I wanted to show you one more thing.